I was at the theater 30 minutes in, and I got a text from my coworker because she was at home watching the movie on HBO Max, and she messages me, "Man, this new Matrix movie is lit." I don't know what the fuck she was watching because this was a pile of dog shit. What's up, everyone? I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas day / weekend, and we are only a few days to the end of 2021, so let's make them count. Today, we are talking about The Matrix Resurrections. It's been, 18 years since we got a Matrix sequel, and Lana Wachowski has returned as writer-director for this movie. Unfortunately, we won't get the other Wachowski sibling, and, you can really tell in this movie that those two really worked well together for the first trilogy. And it kind of suffers the fact that there's only one Wachowski and some additional writers to helm this new vision. In this case, it becomes more style over substance, and when the movie wants to be self-aware, it still takes itself seriously, which is very confusing. A lot of people are shocked the second I walked out of that theater and I was like, this movie sucks. But you know what? We're going to have to get into spoilers to defend my case. First of all, I don't care if you went to a big IMAX theater. I don't care if you were watching it at home on HBO Max and had control of your surround sound system and subtitles. But everybody in the movie, except for Neil Patrick Harris, was monotone as shit. A lot of the new actors, especially Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves, they were just not feeling their roles. They were really downplayed and just really low on the energy of their characters and even the conviction about who they are and what their motivations are. It was so unclear and so bland. This also goes for the script. I mean, people talk shit about The Matrix Revolutions and how boring that movie was. And I have to say, I personally think that Revolutions was better paced than this movie because there was a little bit of an altercation and then there's like an hour and 15 minutes of fucking talking. There's like 30 good minutes of the movie spread out where everyone is just talking, making callbacks and references to the past trilogy. And if that wasn't enough, because it was such a fucking gimmick, they were to intersplice all footage from the entire trilogy, like you forgot. And I get that if you haven't seen the Matrix movies in a while, or if you really have a bad memory and just need all those flashbacks. I don't mind flashbacks. I mean, I watch fucking anime and like the Saw movies. They have a lot of flashbacks. But in this case, it got really irritating. Like throughout the entire film, they were making all these weird like, oh, you remember when we did this? You remember when we said that? And I was just, shut the fuck up and get to the story already. Oh god, especially with the new Morpheus character, and I get why they decided not to use Lawrence Fishburne, and it's because, he's a new version of Morpheus in the program, he's Matrix made or some shit. But then he fucking texts Neo to come to the bathroom and he tries to do his little callback of "at last" with his little intro, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it's all goofy and shit, and then he laughs at himself, and then they go ahead and they play the footage of Lawrence Fishburne. Like, good thing he stayed out of this movie. The first 30 minutes, which is the setup, I really started to check out that early, and it's because Neo is in the same situation he was in the first movie where he's working an office dead-end job, and he's just questioning a lot about his life, but in this one, he's working as a video game creator for the Matrix trilogy, a video game. And it really, really, really threw me off when they would play footage of the Matrix 1 and be like, yeah, that's my video game. And they would just start gimmicking all these lines from the first movie. Like, all these, like, his coworkers are all these, like, fucking fanboys, which are annoying as shit. They even took a jab at Warner Brothers about how they didn't want to make another video game of The Matrix, and yet they were really pushing for a sequel. So they're sitting in an office throwing pitches and ideas of what they could do for a fourth reboot type / sequel. And I'm like sitting there like, was this the actual meeting they had when making this movie? Yeah, nobody really wants to do this one, do they? And then we have a montage of Thomas just going apeshit in his apartment, breaking his table, taking a shit, crying in the bathtub, and all his coworkers just constantly saying, Matrix, Matrix, Matrix. And so besides the new Morpheus being all goofy and gimmicky, we also have The new Agent Smith, played by Jonathan Groff, who is trying so hard to emulate and impersonate Hugo Weaving that it's really hard to buy. Oh my god, it's so awful. And then Jada Pinkett is in this movie. She looking like Jack Sparrow, and just, oh my god, like all her scenes were so thankless and unnecessary to this story. Like she didn't need to have no arc. She's just telling everybody what to do and what they shouldn't do. She didn't do anything. I didn't mind Jessica Henwick's performance as Bugs in this movie. I thought she kind of brought a little bit of a new parallel of what Trinity was in the first film. You know, she's a believer, she's a freedom fighter, and she believes in Neo, and she believes in Trinity. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's kind of weird. She chose to do this movie and passed up on Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Godzilla vs. Kong. A lot of people might disagree with me on this, and it's probably biased when I say that Neil Patrick Harris was probably one of the best performances in this movie, and it's because Neil Patrick Harris is Neil Patrick Harris, but he is the analyst, so there is a lot of menace to him. He is more of the villain type, and that's one of the confusing parts. Like, he had some really good lines, but at the same time, I wasn't too sure who was the real villain here. Like, was it Jonathan Groff or was it Neil Patrick Harris? Because they seemed like they wanted the same things, but the way they wanted to get about with it, they seemed a little bit more in competition. And in the last 30 minutes, when Trinity finally snaps out of it and goes badass mode, that's exactly where I wanted her to be, a little more than halfway towards the middle of the second act instead of like the beginning of the third act, because I don't know, it was just great to see her back in action, back as Trinity. And I thought it was also interesting to see the parallels where, you know, Neo is trying to get her to believe that this is not their real world. And if you like the action scenes that you saw in the trailer, you might enjoy the last hour of the film, because that's where they're all just jam-packed. And it was pretty entertaining, but I gotta admit, the editing choices were really, really offbeat in compared to the trilogy. I also don't know why they made a big deal about Christina Ricci being in this movie, because she literally had one tiny cameo, and that was it. I don't know, they could have casted anybody else, but her character wasn't even important. And circling back to Neo, I love Keanu Reeves. He's a good guy, but him looking like John Wick, like a lazy John Wick, just doesn't really serve this movie. This movie could have gone in two different ways. The movie could have been some HBO Max special. Like, it could have been a reunion, because that's what this movie felt like. It felt like a fan movie. It felt like, hey guys, let's get together and talk about the last 20 years of The Matrix. The other thing is that it could have been a complete parody of itself, like a full-on Matrix parody, and they could have had a lot of fun with it. But instead, it's so serious. And I just was unsure of what this movie wanted to be, because there's even a few moments where they would show a TV or go to a movie theater and they'd be playing The Matrix 1 in the background. Like, what the fuck? That's so silly. But I don't know whether to laugh, make fun of it, or just be like, oh yeah, that's sort of genius. Like, what the fuck? My friend Aaron, who I watched this with, he was telling me how a lot of the footage could be the excuse of the video game cutscenes they were working on. And I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. Like, apparently everybody knows this video game, plays it, and constantly, frequently refers to all the cutscenes. Like, that doesn't make any sense. If cutscenes for a video game is the best thing about a video game, then I don't know what to tell you. It's not good. The narrative of this movie is just a hot mess. It doesn't know what it wants to be. And by the end of the movie, you feel that it's just so unnecessary to have a fourth installment that it could have been an after-school special. It really feels like that. As a viewer, I felt insulted, talked down to, and spoon-fed with so much nostalgia and so much scatterbrain ideas of what they want to do with said fourth installment. There's even a post-credit scene with the other video game creators of The Matrix talking about how movies are dead, and because they need sequels, it's just trash. Like, To make that kind of a reference in your movie, that's really saying something. Lana Wachowski has also claimed that she's not planning on starting a new franchise, which is kind of sad actually, because if you see some of the details that get glossed in this fourth movie, you can really see the potential that it could revive a new trilogy. Ugh, I'd rather watch F9. At least this movie makes that movie look like an Oscar contender. And that's just really saying something. Regardless of my defense from my spoiler review, for those of you who actually still want to go and check out this movie, that's on you. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, hey, you know what? I get to watch it on HBO Max for free, but you know what? That's 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours of my time that I wanted back. Some people say I'm being too harsh about the flashbacks, callbacks, or whatever, and just because I actually watched these 3 movies before watching the 4th one, and they're like, you know, I haven't seen it since the first one came out to theaters, and I'm like, well, good for you. I just didn't want to go to watch a 4th Matrix movie where we watch people talking about what they're gonna do for a Matrix video game. Warner Brothers should have just left this trilogy by itself, live and let die. Or better yet, what the poster says, the choice is yours. I'm gonna choose the blue pill because I ain't diving back into this shit again. Alright guys, that's all I got to say about that movie. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please look forward to more reviews, and I will see you guys in 2022. Okay, bye.